That's all I can really say. If you don't know about this series, you need to get on it. I love trains. That is another reason. If a book is on a train, it gets to be on this list. Okay, the thing is, I haven't read these books in a while, so it's like, ooh, do I remember things? But, that's what the dust jacket is for.
On the 11th day of Bookmas, my true love gave to me 11 remakes of Twilight, 10 tea bags steeping, 9 good romances, 8 shelves for filling, 7 wands a swinging, 6 demon slayings, 5 mysteries, 4 YA tropes, 3 plot twists, 2 classic reads, and the end to my epic fantasy.
Hi guys, it's Ashley Hannah here, and we're doing what is probably one of my favorite videos for the year, and it is the best books of inter-year, so 2025. I like this video because I love reminiscing over what I've read this past year and really taking a fine-tooth comb and going, yeah, that one was a really good book, or that one didn't make the list. As you can tell in my voice, a little bit like on the mend from a sickness, but that basically happens every year at this point. So, the less said, the better. And I was putting off this video because I was convinced that in the next 2 weeks, I would find another 5-star book, but that's probably not going to happen. But I have, let's see, how many books here? I have 10 books, but technically it's more like 7, and you'll see why in a moment. But 10 books that got 5 stars from me and would be considered favorite books of this year. Not every 5-star book made it to this video though, because 1, there were a lot of rereads, and 2, not every 5-star is like, whoa, that's going to be my, I'm going to think about that one for the rest of my life. There are a couple of honorable mentions, though, that did get high ratings, and they will be mentioned as follows. Let's get into it. Honorable mention number 1 is The Women by Kristen Hanna. And The Women is about a 20-year-old girl named Frankie McGrath who is a nursing student, and her whole life changes one day when, in 1965, her older brother is shipped out to serve in the Vietnam War. So she ends up going as a nurse to aid in the process. And what follows is a tale of what happens while she's there, and then also what happens when she comes back. And I really enjoyed this because even though I'm not a historical fiction person and I don't tend to gravitate toward it, I really enjoyed reading about this time in history. I hadn't really read anything about the Vietnam War, and so it was really harrowing to read about it. But also I just liked Frankie as a character because she wasn't this Mary Sue. I don't know. She had her flaws. Am I going to bump this up to a favorite book of the year? I don't know. She had her flaws, but I think that she was a really real character. And I liked how the book talked about love and PTSD and all the nitty gritty. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. It's just not a book that I'm going to reread. In fact, I was moving and I lost the book in the move, and I wasn't too gutted about it. So that's kind of an indication that it's not really a favorite book, but I really enjoyed reading it, and it did get 5 stars, and I would recommend it. So yeah, that is an honorable mention number 1. Honorable mention number 2 is, and this is really sad that this didn't make my favorites of the year because it is a book by one of my favorite authors, none other than Vara McFarlane. Honorable mention. It was really good. It's called You Belong With Me, and it is the follow-up or companion novel to Who's That Girl, which is this book right here. And Who's That Girl is about Edie Thompson. She is a journalist, and she ends up having to, I feel like I pitched this book so many times. She ends up having to move away from her jobs, the town where she works, because she was caught kissing the groom at his wedding. She's not the bride. And she ends up doing a feature, or she has to be the ghostwriter for an autobiography. Is that what it's called when you write it yourself? Yeah, an autobiography for Elliot Owens, and romance ensues. I don't know. This book, love it, love it, love it, love it. 5 stars. But this book came out a while ago. But You Belong With Me is the follow-up companion to what happens after the cliffhanger that takes place in book 1. And the only reason why I can't get this one, like the top books of this year award, is because it's not novella length, but it feels like a novella. And I'm okay with it. Like, I still give it 5 stars, but it's not, it didn't do anything new. And it just, I still loved it. Don't get me wrong, Vari, I still loved your book, but it was more of a companion. Now I can't wait for what you're putting out next year though. So hit me up. Your PR team, call my people. And the last book on my honorable mentions list is The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. And this is a book about, how do you summarize this book? This is a book, it's a fantasy. I think it's a little dystopian, but it's about this place called Kaigan, and there's a school aspect, but it's not really about the school, where all of these kids are being trained to use their elemental power. So they have the control over water. And it's about a son named Mamoru and his growing up and realizing that the Empire has told them certain things and they may or may not be true. And it's also about his mother, Misaki, and her backstory and how it is for her to be a mother, and their culture and all of her hopes and dreams, and because she has 4 sons. And the book is also about their father, and the book is about what you put on yourself as you take on these roles of like father, mother, son, what have you, like fighter. And the book, and this is why it doesn't get top books of this year. One is poorly paced, and I said this before, but it also spans a lot of places that I feel like don't get fully talked about enough, mostly pertaining to Misaki's origin story. But that being said, it made me almost cry, because if you want a book about a mother's love, read this book. It's so good. Misaki is quite the standout character. I also keep saying this. It's like if John Wick and Avatar: The Last Airbender were combined into one. And that's what I'll leave it at. Okay, so let's get to the actual list. So, first up on my top books of 2024 is, let's go with The Godfather by Mario Puzo. And, I still need to watch this movie. 2, I had the worst time reading this when I started it, because this is a book about a mob family in the 1950s, thereabouts. At the head of it, there is this Don, or the Godfather, who, if you need something done, you go to him. You need somebody off, go to him. Your daughter needs a nice cake for her birthday, go to him. There ends up being a war between, the families in this novel. And there's a lot of fallout in the process. One of the things that this book does so well is the grit. It has so much grit, and it's very raw. It does not pull no punches. And the other thing it does well is that I got attached to these characters so much. Like any book on this list of best books, I have gotten attached to the characters. Most specifically, Michael Corleone. At a certain point, this book went from meh to whoa when we focused more on him and certain things that happen throughout his life. And I just really enjoy that this book is just like family.org. Love. We love a family. Do yourself a favor, read this book because it's a story. It's a complete story and a complete world, and yeah, love. The next book we will be talking about is, let's go with this one. These are in no particular order. I can't choose. The Will of the Many by James Islington. There was a point in time this year when this book was all I could talk about, because it's really freaking good, y'all. And this is about okay, the thing is, I haven't read these books in a while, so it's like, ooh, do I remember things? But, that's what the dust jacket is for. This is a book about the Canaan Republic, or the hierarchy. And it's about a little orphan boy named Viz Telemus. He's been tapped by somebody to infiltrate the academy, go in and figure out what happened all these years ago and solve a murder. In this book, it is a fantasy with a slightly dubious magic system that I don't really understand, where they use will and you have to seed this will, but then the main character doesn't want to, and basically he has to rise through the academy without getting discovered. And this book was so good. It reminded me of when I was reading insert epic fantasy. This author just writes an entertaining and adventurous book. He just does. I was a little bit wary because I had read The Shadow What Was Lost this year, and I was like, it's a 4-star book. It's okay. But this book, it's like I don't know if he wrote that one first and this one second, but he took what was working in that first series and then he just improved upon it for this one. The characters are 10 out of 10. The romance, 10 out of 10. The plot and pacing, so good. I never felt bored, not once. And this is a chunky book. I was not bored. The only issue I had was that the magic system was not explained. But then I'm like, maybe he'll explain it in the second book. And also, that ending, what even is the ending? I still don't know. I kind of know, but I just can't wait for the second book, which is coming out next year. So, yeah, please read it so I can talk to you about it. Thank you. Also, it's like a Roman-inspired world, so just real interesting. Next. The next book on this list is Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. This is a book about Cassie Hanwell, who is a female firefighter, and she's a firefighter in Texas, but she has to uproot her life when she has a family emergency happen, and her mother asks for her help in caretaking and asks for her to move to Boston. And she has not the greatest relationship with her mother, so she is not too pleased, but she does it, however reluctantly. And while she's there, she ends up, having to get used to a new job at a new firehouse. And, it's a boys' club. And she feels that her other firehouse was just more progressive. And so, to make sure that her experience there is not too sucky, she, gives herself some rules. Don't show any weakness. Don't be girly. And, number 1, do not fall in love. So, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. Not going to spoil anything. But this book was so... I didn't expect it to be so deep. And it really was. You wouldn't expect it from this cover. It's just like a there cover. But this book is so emotional. It is so, there's a theme with my favorite books. Anything talking about, relationships between mother and child, father and child. You got me. I will bawl like a baby. So, of course, I bawled like a baby during this one. Cassie just goes through so much, and she grows so much. Her resilience, breathtaking. And And this book was funny. Like, Catherine Center's writing was funny in this novel. And I also just liked reading about a female firefighter, because I could never imagine doing that. Ever. So, yeah, this just was a great book to read about such a daunting profession. And, yeah, the mother-daughter conversation was just lovely. So, yeah, I would highly recommend this one. Of course, I'd highly recommend any book on this list in this video. The next books, plural, I don't know, that I have on this list are the books in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or just the Lord of the Rings. I read these books for a video, and I did not expect to love them so much. I think mostly when it comes to this series, and why it's on this best books list, is just the fact that I'm proud of myself for persevering and, reading this, because it is daunting. It's daunting. It's not, if you're used to a book, if you're used to reading books that are easier to read and have a heavy romantic plot line, then, you're gonna feel some kind of, pride in finishing such a daunting book series. And I just wish that I'd read it sooner, because there's people who are like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I read these, and I'm like, oh man, I wish that my dad had read them to me. But I don't think I would have had the ability to enjoy them. I don't know. And also, I feel like it was a very immersive experience, because after I read the books, then I watched the movies. And also, I listened to the audiobooks, which I would highly recommend if you feel like you can't get through these. The audio makes it that much more of an immersive experience. I don't know which book I liked the most. I think I liked The Fellowship of the Ring the best, because it's the starter books and the ending books that are really like the best in trilogies. I think I did rate The Two Towers the lowest, but if you're talking about them as one book, which they're meant to be, it's definitely 5 out of 5 stars. I'm in awe of how Tolkien wrote such a vast world. Like, that's crazy. I'm also just in awe of that. And then The Return of the King made me cry. So that's another theme with this video. If the books made me cry, you're getting a seat on this list. The next book on this list is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This book is just a coming-of-age story about a little girl named Francie who, she just wants to be loved by her mama. Yeah, this is set in what era is this set in? Like the early 1900s, 1912, that time period. And it's about Francie, who grows up in what seems like a kind of dysfunctional family with her brother. And they are just a regular working class family, don't really have everything they need, but they're making it work. And you're just watching her grow up. Francie is such a good character. She reminds me of Jo from Little Women. She's just a voracious reader, and she's probably a little bit too perceptive, and she really loves her father, but knows she probably shouldn't. This book isn't just about her, it's about the people in her family, her mother, her father, her aunt, her aunts. And I read this book in tandem while listening to the audiobook, and again, would highly recommend that experience. It feels of that time period, and again, this is a book about family, and I just loved how it didn't sugarcoat the relationship. This is just a really quiet book about the people growing up in the slums of Brooklyn at this time period, and it was heartfelt and had so many interesting topics of conversation. One of them being how women treat other women, and how it differs from how men treat each other. I don't know. It was just exquisite. Super quiet, but super poignant and thought-provoking. Loved. The next book on this list is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is the sequel to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. I don't really know why No, I know why I gave this book 5 stars, and it's on this list. It's just because I love a meta book. I love a meta book. Also, I love trains. That is another reason. If a book is on a train, it gets to be on this list. And the third reason is that it actually made me want to cry. And a mystery book will not usually do that. So that was a very interesting thing that happened. And basically, this is about Ernest Cunningham, and this time he is at the Australian Mystery Writers Society, who's invited him to their crime writing festival aboard a famous train. And he's there looking for inspiration to write a second book, because if you didn't know, in the first book, his profession is writing books telling mystery writers how to write mystery. Like, he didn't write mystery novels. He taught people how to write them. But this time he's trying to write a mystery novel, a fiction one. And on this train, there are a bunch of people, mystery lovers and authors alike. And when one of them gets murdered, he has to solve it. And like I said, this is a very meta book. In the prologue, he usually spells out how you can figure out the murderer, if you'd like to. And he says, at what point, what's going to happen. So it's very, he maps out everything in the prologue, which I think is so funny. And I also just liked, I love Ernie as a character. He is very dry, and I love a dry humor. And there was a nice, heartwarming quality to this one. I don't know. So if you like trains, if you like mystery, and if you like meta and witty novels, this is a really good one. I don't know. It really it hit where it needed to hit when I read this. So I loved it. All right. The next book that I read that I gave 5 stars that will be on my best books of this year is Dark Age by Pierce Brown, which is a very stark contrast to his other book that I read this year, which was Lightbringer. Is that it? No, it was Iron Gold. I haven't read Lightbringer yet. Iron Gold, I think I gave that one 3 stars. And after the trilogy, the original trilogy, I was like, what? This is such a flop. There's too many new characters. Wah. But then I read this one, and it was so good. And it made me cry like a baby. And this one is about, I'm trying not to spoil anything. Continuation of, the war that's happening. There you go. Sci-fi. Space. War. That's all I can really say. If you don't know about this series, you need to get on it. The Red Rising Saga. Please read it. This one got me goodly. I needed to know what was happening. And then I also, where I didn't like the new characters and perspectives, I loved them here. I think that Pierce Brown really knew what he was doing when he set up those characters and this storyline in Iron Gold, and he drove it home in this one. So I loved it. And you'd think I'd be tired of the war happening in this book, but no, I'm not tired yet. No. So I will continue reading this series. I am going on to Lightbringer eventually. And the last book on this list of best books of 2024 is East of Eden, which I just finished, by John Steinbeck. This book is so good. It's not even funny. This is a book that is an allegory for Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the book of Genesis. in the Bible. And it's about this, well, it's mainly about one family, the Trasks, and it's interspliced with the Hamiltons as well. But these families living in California during the late 1800s / early 1900s. And just like Genesis, it really does go from the beginning, the origins of these families, and it weaves the tale of what brought them to where they are now, where the narrator is telling us about. And it's a book about the importance of having a loving foundation, and it's a book about guilt and a book about good and evil, and if anybody is wholly good or wholly evil. And it's about the power of choice, like choosing to do better, or if you can't choose and it's predestined or preordained for you. And this book has probably one of my favorite villains of all time in this book. And this book was published, of course, much earlier than now, but it still feels very relevant. The problems that the characters have, the problems that the world was having at that point. As you can see, many tabs were taken, and there are basically whole paragraphs that could have been underlined in this novel. So it's very quotable. It's very, I wouldn't say beautiful. I guess it is beautiful writing, but it's not flowery. It's just, I guess you could say poetic. It's poetic writing, and I felt for all of the characters. Even if I didn't like them, I still felt for them. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful novel, and I'm so glad that I read it, and I would highly recommend anybody read this one. If you're looking for a classic that's not too daunting, sure, it's pretty long, but it's honestly a really great read. So I would definitely pick it up. Okay, those are all the books that are on my best books of this year. I feel like this was a terrible video because I'm still kind of coming off of my fever. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys liked the video. Please like and subscribe and all that nonsense. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.